My name is Ramiro Alvarez, and at 67 years old, I thought I understood what family meant. After retiring from my construction business, I settled into a modest home in Maine, far from my prized $2.8 million beach house in California. That house represented decades of hard work and sacrifice. What I never expected was the day my only daughter Stephanie would exclude me from her wedding, then days later demand my beach house with those cutting words, "You owe me this, Dad." If you are watching this right now, drop a comment telling me where you are viewing from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how I responded to my daughter when family became nothing but a financial transaction. My story begins in the strawberry fields of California, where my parents worked after immigrating from Mexico. From age 12, I joined them during summers and weekends, the sun beating down on my back as I harvested alongside my father. Those early years taught me the value of hard work and persistence. My parents had one dream for me that drove them through those brutal days in the fields, that I would get an education they never had. I took their dream seriously. During high school, I worked 3 jobs simultaneously, saving every penny for college. My days started at 4 in the morning delivering newspapers, continued with school, followed by an evening shift at a local restaurant, and weekends at a gas station. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. When I finally received my acceptance letter to California State University, my mother wept with pride. I was the first in my family to attend college. University life was a cultural shock. Most students came from privileged backgrounds, while I continued working multiple jobs between classes. During my junior year, in an economics class, I met Amanda Thompson. With her blonde hair and confident smile, she came from an upper-middle-class family in San Francisco. Despite our different backgrounds, we connected over shared ambitions and dreams of building something meaningful. Amanda believed in me when I shared my plans to start my own construction company after graduation. While others saw a poor Mexican-American kid with unrealistic goals, she saw determination. We married a year after graduation, a small ceremony with my family and her somewhat disapproving parents in attendance. Starting my business was harder than I imagined. I began with residential remodeling jobs, often working solo to save costs. Amanda took a teaching job to support us through those lean years. We lived in a tiny apartment, saving every extra dollar to reinvest in the business. Slowly, through word of mouth and reputation for quality work, my company grew. By our 5th anniversary, I had 10 employees and was taking on larger commercial projects. When Amanda told me we were expecting a baby, it was the happiest moment of my life. I worked even harder, often 16-hour days, determined to provide a better life for my child than I had. The day Stephanie was born, I held that tiny bundle in my arms and promised her the world. The first 7 years with Stephanie were beautiful. Despite my busy schedule, I made time for bedtime stories, weekend trips to the beach, and teaching her to ride a bike. Amanda decorated her room like a princess castle, and I built her a custom playhouse in the backyard. Our home was filled with laughter and love. As the business grew more successful, requiring more of my time, the first cracks in my marriage appeared. Amanda resented the long hours I worked, despite the increasing financial comfort it provided. She wanted me home more, but turning down projects meant potentially losing clients to competitors. The arguments became more frequent, often after Stephanie was in bed. By the time Stephanie turned 7, Amanda and I were living separate lives under the same roof. The final breaking point came when she discovered I had purchased land for a beachfront property as an investment without consulting her. In her eyes, it was proof I valued business over family. In reality, I saw it as securing our future. The divorce was ugly. Amanda hired an aggressive attorney who portrayed me as a workaholic father who neglected his family. Though I wanted joint custody, the judge awarded Amanda primary custody, with me getting every other weekend and Wednesday dinners. I was devastated but determined to remain present in Stephanie's life. What I didn't anticipate was Amanda's systematic campaign to limit my access. Suddenly, Stephanie had dance recitals or birthday parties scheduled during my weekends. When I showed up for Wednesday dinners, Amanda would claim Stephanie wasn't feeling well or had too much homework. My calls went unanswered for days. Despite these obstacles, I continued paying child support far beyond the court-ordered amount. I covered Stephanie's private school tuition, summer camps, dance lessons, and extracurricular activities. When Amanda complained about wanting to buy a larger house in a better school district, I provided the down payment, hoping it would improve Stephanie's life, even if it meant she moved further away from me. As Stephanie entered her teenage years, our relationship grew increasingly strained. When she did spend time with me, she seemed distant, often texting friends or complaining about being bored. I tried everything to connect, from shopping trips to expensive concerts with backstage passes. Nothing seemed to spark the closeness we once had. Meanwhile, Amanda had begun dating Thomas Burton, a wealthy investment banker who lavished Stephanie with gifts and trips. When Stephanie called to cancel our planned 16th birthday celebration because Thomas was taking her and her friends to Paris instead, I swallowed my hurt and sent an additional gift. I never wanted to make Stephanie feel caught between her parents. Through college, I continued supporting Stephanie financially, covering her tuition at an expensive East Coast university, her apartment, and a new car. Her calls became exclusively focused on financial needs, rarely asking about my life or health. Still, I held on to hope that once she matured and established her independence, our relationship would improve. I never stopped trying to show her I loved her, sending care packages, birthday gifts, and regular messages checking in. I cherished the rare moments when the wall between us temporarily lowered, like when she called excited about making the dean's list or when she needed advice about a difficult professor. Those brief connections kept my hope alive that eventually we would find our way back to the close relationship we once had. The first real heartbreak came 3 years ago when I was scrolling through Facebook during my morning coffee. A notification appeared showing Stephanie had changed her relationship status to engaged. My coffee cup froze midway to my lips as I stared at the screen, completely blindsided. My daughter was getting married, and I had found out through social media, like a distant acquaintance. I immediately called her, my hands shaking slightly as I dialed. The call went straight to voicemail. I left what I hoped was an excited, supportive message, congratulating her and asking to meet her fiancé. I followed up with texts expressing my happiness for her. Days passed without response. Finally, almost a week later, she replied with a brief text. "Thanks. Very busy with wedding plans." No details, no invitation to be involved, no mention of meeting her fiancé, Jackson. I tried to stay positive, telling myself she was just overwhelmed with the excitement of planning her big day. 2 months passed with minimal communication. I learned through mutual family friends that the wedding was scheduled for June at an exclusive vineyard in Napa Valley. I waited patiently for the invitation, checking my mailbox with anticipation each day. As spring turned to early summer and other relatives began mentioning their travel arrangements, the knot in my stomach grew tighter. After 3 months of silence, I finally worked up the courage to directly ask about the wedding. I called on a Sunday afternoon, rehearsing what I would say, determined to sound supportive rather than hurt. When Stephanie actually answered, I was momentarily speechless. "Stephanie, honey, I wanted to talk about your wedding plans." I started carefully. The silence on the other end was deafening before she finally responded. "What about them?" "Well, I noticed I haven't received an invitation yet, and it seems like the date is approaching. I just wanted to make sure it hadn't gotten lost in the mail." What came next felt like a physical blow. "Dad, I didn't think you would expect to be invited," she said, her voice detached. "You know, you have never really been part of my life in any meaningful way. Thomas is walking me down the aisle. He has been more of a father to me than you ever were." I struggled to find words as she continued. "It would just be awkward having you there. Mom and Thomas have paid for everything, and all their family will be attending. You would just feel out of place." The conversation ended with me somehow managing to wish her happiness, my voice barely above a whisper as I fought back tears. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen, staring at the wall for hours, replaying every moment of her childhood, wondering where I had failed so completely that my own daughter didn't consider me family enough to attend her wedding. Despite the crushing pain, I decided not to create drama. This was her day, and I wouldn't cast a shadow over it with my hurt feelings. Instead, I wrote her a heartfelt letter expressing my love and support, along with a check for $50,000 as a wedding gift, far more than I could comfortably afford, but I wanted to give her something significant. The letter was returned unopened. The check, however, was cashed immediately. On the day of the wedding, I sat alone in my living room, surrounded by photo albums chronicling Stephanie's childhood. Pictures of me teaching her to swim, building sandcastles, attending her elementary school plays, all memories that apparently meant nothing to her. I had ordered her favorite flowers, white lilies, and arranged them around my home, a private celebration of her special day that I wasn't permitted to attend. My friends were concerned. Michael, my oldest friend from college, called repeatedly that day, offering to come over. I assured him I was fine, though we both knew that was far from true. Several other friends invited me to dinner, fishing trips, anything to distract me, but I politely declined. This was a grief I needed to process alone. Through social media, I glimpsed fragments of the wedding. Mutual friends posted photos of the beautiful venue, the elegant decorations, Stephanie looking radiant in her gown. In one particularly painful image, I saw Thomas proudly walking her down the aisle, Amanda beaming from the front row. The entire extended Thompson family was there. Cousins I had known during my marriage all smiling in group photos. Everyone was present except me. That night, I wrote a long email to Stephanie that I never sent, pouring out decades of hurt, confusion, and love. Instead, I drafted a simple message congratulating her on what looked like a beautiful ceremony and wishing her and Jackson happiness in their new life together. She never responded. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into renovating my main home, a project I had been putting off for years. Physical labor had always been my therapy, and I spent days ripping out old floors, refacing cabinets, and repainting walls. My neighbors commented on my sudden energy, unaware it was fueled by heartbreak rather than inspiration. The wedding exclusion forced me to face a painful truth I had been avoiding for years. Despite my financial support and desperate attempts to maintain a connection, Stephanie did not see me as her father in any meaningful sense. The realization was devastating, but I tried to accept her choice with grace. I told myself that perhaps someday, when she had children of her own, she might understand and reach out. It was a thin hope, but it was all I had. The beach house that would become the center of our final conflict was my pride and joy. Located in a small coastal community near Santa Barbara, it was a modern two-story structure, with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the Pacific Ocean. I had purchased the undeveloped land 20 years earlier as an investment, holding onto it through financial ups and downs, refusing multiple offers from developers who recognized its prime location. 5 years before retirement, I finally had the resources and time to build my dream home there. I worked closely with an architect to design a house that maximized the spectacular ocean views while blending with the natural landscape. Construction took nearly 2 years, with me flying out monthly to oversee progress and make decisions. Every detail, from the reclaimed wood floors to the custom kitchen designed for someone who loved cooking, reflected my personal taste and vision. The house represented not just a significant financial investment of $2.8 million, but decades of sacrifice and hard work. During the lean years of building my business, when I lived in a tiny apartment and drove a car with 200,000 miles on it, that piece of land was the promise of a future reward. When completed, the beach house became my planned retirement sanctuary, a place where I imagined grandchildren might someday build sandcastles and where family holidays could be celebrated with the sound of waves in the background. The call from Stephanie came exactly 16 days after her wedding. Seeing her name on my caller ID sent a surge of hope through me, thinking perhaps she was reaching out to thank me for the wedding gift or even to apologize for the wedding exclusion. "Dad," she said without preamble when I answered, "Jackson and I are planning our honeymoon, and we were thinking about spending it at your beach house in California." No hello, no acknowledgement of the $50,000 gift, no mention of the wedding. The abruptness caught me off guard. "Oh, I see. When were you thinking of visiting?" I asked, trying to sound casual despite my disappointment at the transactional nature of the call. "Next month. We would need it for 3 weeks. she replied matter-of-factly. Obviously, you would need to not be there. I hesitated, calculating quickly. I had planned to spend that entire month at the beach house myself, a rare extended stay I had been looking forward to for months. That might be difficult, Stephanie. I already have plans to be there myself during that time. But maybe we could work something out for a shorter period, or perhaps another time later in the year. Her tone shifted instantly, a cold edge entering her voice. We have already requested the time off work and told friends about it. You need to make this happen, Dad. The conversation rapidly deteriorated from there. What began as a request transformed into a demand, with Stephanie becoming increasingly agitated as I tried to suggest compromises. You have 2 homes, she snapped. Why do you even need a beach house at your age? Jackson and I are just starting our lives together, and you already have everything. I was stunned by the entitlement in her voice but tried to remain calm. Stephanie, I worked very hard for many years to afford that house. It is not just an investment property to me. It is where I plan to live out my retirement years. What she said next left me speechless. You owe me this, Dad. After being an absent father my entire life, letting me down over and over again, the least you can do is let us use your house. Consider it. Compensation for all the ballet recitals you missed and birthdays you forgot. The accusation struck like a physical blow. Absent father, missed recitals, forgotten birthdays. I had never willingly missed a single event I was informed about. I had kept a calendar dedicated to her activities, begging Amanda for updates and information about school events. Before I could defend myself, Stephanie continued, her voice rising. Besides, that house will be mine eventually anyway. You might as well let me start enjoying it now. The presumption that my home was already mentally designated as her inheritance stunned me. We had never discussed inheritance, and I had made no promises about the beach house or any other assets. I have not made any decisions about inheritance, Stephanie, I said quietly. And even if I had, that would be something to discuss many years from now, not as a justification for demanding use of my home now. At this point, I heard muffled voices and realized I was being put on speakerphone. Jackson's voice joined the conversation. Ramiro, he said, using my first name rather than any respectful acknowledgement of my relationship to his wife. We are not just talking about a vacation here. We are thinking long-term. That house and its location is only going to increase in value. It makes financial sense for you to sign it over to Stephanie now rather than later for tax purposes. The calculated nature of this statement made it clear they had discussed this before calling me. This was not about a honeymoon, but about acquiring a valuable asset. Jackson continued talking about potential property value increases and how they could eventually sell for a significant profit, revealing that they viewed my cherished home as nothing more than a financial opportunity. As the conversation continued, my initial shock transformed into a deep, aching hurt. The realization that my daughter and her new husband saw me not as family but as a source of financial gain was painful beyond words. They spoke about my retirement dream as if it were already theirs to plan for, discussing potential renovations they would make once it was officially theirs. After nearly 30 minutes of this increasingly uncomfortable conversation, I finally interrupted their planning. I need some time to think about all of this, I said quietly. This is a significant request, and I cannot give you an answer right now. Stephanie made a sound of frustration. We need to know soon, Dad. Like, this week. I will call you next week with my decision, I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. I need to consult with some people first. After ending the call, I sat in silence for a long time, the ocean visible through my living room windows becoming blurred as tears filled my eyes. The casual cruelty of their demands, the entitled assumption that I owed them my most prized possession, left me questioning everything I thought I knew about my relationship with my daughter. That night, I barely slept, replaying the conversation and wondering how we had arrived at this point. How had my little girl, who once ran into my arms with complete trust and love, become someone who viewed me only as a means to financial gain? What had gone so terribly wrong? The day after Stephanie's shocking call, I found myself pulling boxes from the attic, containers I had carefully packed and preserved through multiple moves. These held the physical evidence of my relationship with my daughter, items I had saved to combat the growing hollowness of our connection. The first box contained every card and drawing Stephanie had ever given me, from wobbly preschool handprints to awkward teenage birthday cards signed with increasingly impersonal messages as the years progressed. I found the Father's Day craft projects, the handmade gifts, tangible memories of a time when she had loved me without reservation. Another box held financial records, meticulously organized. I found copies of checks for child support, private school tuition, summer camps, dance lessons, the down payment for the house Amanda had wanted in the better school district. I found receipts for the computer I bought when Stephanie started high school, the car when she turned 16, the apartment security deposit for college. As I sorted through these records, a pattern emerged that troubled me deeply. Despite providing financial support far beyond court requirements, I had dozens of angry emails from Amanda, claiming I was behind on payments or refusing to cover expenses. I found threatening letters from her attorney that contradicted my own records, showing payments had been made on time or even early. Most disturbing were printed email exchanges between Amanda and Stephanie's dance instructor, piano teacher, and school counselor, all of which included variations of, "Please only contact me regarding Stephanie's schedule. Her father is not to be informed of performances or parent meetings." With growing unease, I reached out to Maria, the nanny who had helped care for Stephanie during the early years after the divorce. Though we had lost touch, I found her through social media, now running her own daycare business in another state. "Mr. Alvarez," she said when I reached her by phone, "I have been hoping you would contact me someday." What she revealed over our 2-hour conversation shattered what remained of my illusions. According to Maria, Amanda had systematically fed Stephanie a narrative about me that bore little resemblance to reality. She told Stephanie I had refused to pay child support, forcing them to live frugally while I enjoyed a lavish lifestyle. She claimed I had voluntarily given up custody because I didn't want the responsibility of parenthood. Most cruelly, she told Stephanie I had abandoned them for another woman. A complete fabrication. "I tried to tell Stephanie the truth several times," Maria explained, "but she was too young to understand, and Amanda threatened to fire me and provide no references if I contradicted her version of events. I needed that job to support my own children. I have regretted my silence ever since." Maria revealed that Amanda regularly discarded gifts I sent, telling Stephanie they were inadequate or thoughtless. She scheduled extra activities during my visitation days, then told Stephanie I had canceled our plans. My calls were screened, messages deleted. "The worst was when you would send extra money for special occasions," Maria continued. "Amanda would use it to buy things Stephanie wanted, but would tell her they came from her and Thomas. The birthday, you supposedly forgot when Stephanie was 9. You had actually sent a generous check specifically for her birthday party. Amanda used it for the venue and cake, but told Stephanie you had sent nothing." As evidence of this manipulation, Maria emailed me photos she had secretly saved, showing Stephanie opening gifts I had sent that Amanda had repackaged as coming from her and Thomas. She also sent screenshots of old text exchanges, with Amanda discussing my scheduled visits and Amanda's deliberate plans to create conflicts. Armed with this new information, I made the most difficult call of my life. I contacted Amanda directly, something I had avoided for years to prevent conflict that might further damage my relationship with Stephanie. Amanda answered with obvious surprise at seeing my number. "Ramiro? Why are you calling me?" "I know what you did," I said simply. "I know how you manipulated Stephanie and poisoned her against me for years." There was a pause before Amanda laughed, a sound without humor. "Took you long enough to figure it out. What are you going to do about it now? Stephanie is an adult who wants nothing to do with you. That ship has sailed." Her casual admission, without a hint of remorse, stunned me. "Why, Amanda? What did I ever do to deserve that level of cruelty?" "You chose your business over us," she replied coldly. "You were so focused on building your precious company and making money that you missed what was important. When you bought that beachfront property without telling me, I realized we would never be your priority. So you punished me by stealing my relationship with my daughter?" I asked, my voice breaking. "That property was an investment for our family's future, for Stephanie's future." "Well, it worked out for the best," she replied dismissively. "Thomas has been a wonderful father to Stephanie, and they have a real relationship. You were just the bank account. When I mentioned potentially telling Stephanie the truth, Amanda's tone turned threatening. She would never believe you over me. And if you try, I will make sure you never have any relationship with her at all. I will tell her you are having mental health issues, creating false memories out of guilt. Who do you think she will trust? After ending the call with Amanda, I sat surrounded by the evidence of years of manipulation and deceit. The scope of what had been done to sabotage my relationship with Stephanie was breathtaking in its thoroughness and cruelty. I had been cast as the villain in her life story, while faithfully fulfilling every obligation and more. Most painfully, I realized that Stephanie had chosen to believe this narrative without ever questioning it or giving me an opportunity to defend myself. Even as an adult capable of critical thinking, she had accepted her mother's version of events completely. Perhaps it was easier than admitting she had been manipulated, or perhaps the financial benefits of maintaining the status quo with Thomas and Amanda outweighed any desire for truth. The evidence before me made one thing devastatingly clear. In Stephanie's mind, I was nothing more than a financial resource to be tapped when needed. Our relationship, whatever remnants existed, had been reduced to a series of transactions. The beach house demand was merely the latest and most brazen example. That night, I experienced what I can only describe as a profound grief, mourning not just the relationship I had lost with my daughter, but the relationship that might have been without Amanda's interference. I grieved for all the moments stolen from us, the trust that had been systematically destroyed, the love that had been redirected through manipulation and lies. As dawn broke after a sleepless night, I found myself facing the hardest question of all. What now? What does a father do when he discovers his child sees him only as a wallet, not a parent? What is the right response to such a profound betrayal by the people who should have been closest to him? The week following my discoveries was a period of deep reflection. I spent hours walking along the main coastline near my home, the rhythmic crash of waves against rocks mirroring the tumult in my heart. The beach house decision loomed, with Stephanie expecting an answer soon. My initial impulse to simply refuse her demand had evolved into something more complex, as I considered what response would bring healing rather than further damage. On the third day of contemplation, I began researching charitable organizations in the Santa Barbara area, particularly those serving children. If my house was to be used by someone other than me, perhaps it could benefit those truly in need rather than satisfying Stephanie and Jackson's greed. Among several organizations, one stood out immediately: Oceanside Children's Home, a facility housing orphaned and foster children awaiting permanent placement. Their website featured photos of children participating in various activities, but notably absent were any beach outings. Despite being located just 3 miles from the ocean, I contacted Sarah Williams, the director, explaining that I owned a beachfront property and was interested in potentially making it available to the children somehow. Her excitement was palpable even over the phone. "Mr. Alvarez, most of our children have never even been to the beach, despite living so close to the ocean," she explained. "Transportation and accessibility issues make regular beach visits nearly impossible with our limited resources." Sarah invited me to visit the facility during my next trip to California. 2 days later, I was on a flight to Santa Barbara. The decision about Stephanie temporarily deferred while I explored this new possibility. The Oceanside Children's Home was a well-maintained but modest facility housed in a converted former school building. Inside, about 30 children ranging from toddlers to teenagers lived in dormitory-style rooms, cared for by a dedicated but clearly overworked staff. Sarah gave me a tour, introducing me to children who regarded me with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Many had been abandoned or removed from abusive homes, their ability to trust adults understandably compromised. In their wary eyes, I recognized a familiar pain, the same disconnection I felt with Stephanie despite years of trying to bridge the gap. 12-year-old Anthony particularly stood out, shadowing our tour with quiet intensity. When Sarah explained I owned a house on the beach, he finally spoke. "I have never seen the ocean up close," he admitted. "Is it scary?" The question touched something deep within me. "It can be powerful," I answered truthfully, "but it is also peaceful and healing. The sound of waves can make your problems seem smaller." "I have big problems," he said solemnly. "I could use something to make them smaller." That simple exchange crystallized my decision. These children, who had experienced genuine abandonment and loss, deserved the healing presence of the ocean far more than my daughter and her husband, who wanted the property merely for status and potential profit. The next day, I met with my attorney, James Peterson, who had handled my business affairs for decades. I explained my desire to donate the beach house to the Oceanside Children's Home, ensuring it would benefit children who truly needed it. "This is a substantial donation, Ramiro," James cautioned. "The property is worth nearly $3 million. Are you certain you want to give it away rather than selling it? This represents a significant portion of your retirement savings." "I am certain," I replied without hesitation, "but I need to structure it in a way that ensures it remains available to these children long term. I do not want it sold off for development or used for anything other than providing these kids access to the healing power of the ocean." Over the next 2 weeks, James worked with me to create a charitable trust with specific provisions. The beach house would be donated to Oceanside Children's Home, with legally binding conditions. It must remain a facility for children's use only, could never be sold for commercial development, and would include a maintenance fund I established from my savings to ensure its upkeep would not burden the organization's limited budget. Sarah and the board of directors were overwhelmed when I presented the proposal. "This is beyond anything we could have imagined," Sarah said, tears in her eyes. "Do you understand what this will mean for our children? To have a safe, private beach access point, a place for therapy sessions with the ocean as backdrop, a tangible example that someone cares enough to give them something of real value." As the legal documents were being finalized, I found myself spending more time at the children's home, getting to know the kids and staff. I helped Anthony overcome his initial fear of waves, taught 14-year-old Maria how to build a proper sandcastle, and watched in wonder as 7-year-old twins Emily and Ethan collected seashells with the seriousness of scientists gathering specimens. In these children, I rediscovered the joy of mentoring and guiding that had been stolen from my relationship with Stephanie. Unlike my daughter, who had been poisoned against me, these children approached our interactions with simple gratitude and growing trust. They had no expectations beyond the moment we shared, no demands for more than what was freely given. With the trust established and the donation process underway, I finally called Stephanie to give her my decision. My hands trembled slightly as I dialed, but my resolve was firm. "Dad," she answered impatiently finally, "we were starting to think you were avoiding us. So, when can we come get the keys to the beach house?" Her presumption that my decision was already made in their favor strengthened my resolve. "Stephanie," I began carefully, "I have given your request a lot of thought. The beach house is very special to me, as you know. It represents years of hard work and sacrifice." Yes, she interrupted. "And now it can benefit your only daughter. That is how family works, Dad." The irony of her suddenly appealing to family ties was not lost on me. "I agree that family is important," I continued steadily. "That is why I have made a decision that I believe honors the true meaning of family." I took a deep breath before continuing. "I have donated the beach house to Oceanside Children's Home, an organization that houses orphaned and foster children. The paperwork was finalized yesterday." The silence that followed was absolute. When Stephanie finally spoke, her voice was barely controlled fury. "You did what? You gave away my house to complete strangers? You cannot be serious." "It was never your house, Stephanie," I replied gently. "And these children are not strangers to me anymore. They are kids who have experienced real abandonment and loss, who have never even seen the ocean despite living miles from it. The house will give them something they have never had, a place where they feel valued and worthy of beauty." As I expected, her response was explosive, a torrent of accusations and threats. I listened without interruption, allowing her to exhaust her anger. When she finally paused for breath, I spoke again, my voice calm and resolved. "The decision is made, Stephanie. The house is now legally held in a charitable trust, with specific conditions ensuring it will serve these children for generations to come. I hope someday you might understand that this decision reflects what I believe about family, that it is about love and support, not transactions and obligations. You will regret this, she said coldly before ending the call. Perhaps I would face regrets, but in that moment, as I looked out at the ocean from what would soon be the children's beach house, I felt nothing but peace. For the first time in years, I had made a decision based not on desperately trying to win Stephanie's approval or compensate for her mother's manipulation, but on my own values and beliefs about what truly matters in life. The beach house that had once represented my retirement dream was transforming into something even more meaningful, a place of healing and joy for children who had known too little of either. In giving it away, I had somehow regained a part of myself that had been lost in years of emotional manipulation and rejection. The fallout from my decision was swift and intense, just as I had anticipated. Within hours of my conversation with Stephanie, my phone was flooded with voicemails and texts not only from her but from Amanda, Jackson, and even Thomas, all expressing varying degrees of outrage and disbelief. Stephanie's initial shock had transformed into calculated fury. "I just spoke with our attorney," her text read. "What you have done may constitute elder financial exploitation. We are exploring options to have the donation legally overturned based on your clearly compromised mental state." Jackson was more direct in his voicemail. "You had no right to give away property that should rightfully come to your daughter. We had plans for that house, financial plans that would have secured our future. You have betrayed your own blood for strangers." Even Amanda called, her voice dripping with venom. "You always were a vindictive man, Ramiro, using those poor orphans to punish your own daughter, all because she dared to call you out on being an absent father. This just proves everything I ever told her about you was true." The most surprising contact came from Thomas, Amanda's husband, who had rarely communicated with me directly over the years. "Ramiro, I have never interfered in your relationship with Stephanie, but this crosses a line. Whatever issues exist between you two, punishing her by giving away a valuable inheritance is simply cruel. I strongly urge you to reconsider while there is still time." The irony of Thomas claiming he had never interfered in my relationship with Stephanie was almost laughable, given what I now knew about his role in reinforcing Amanda's narrative about me. His concern, like the others, was clearly focused on the financial loss rather than any emotional impact. I forwarded all these messages to James, my attorney, who reassured me that the donation was legally sound. "The trust was properly executed while you were of completely sound mind," he confirmed. "Their claims of mental incompetence would never stand up to scrutiny, and characterizing a charitable donation as elder financial exploitation is absurd on its face. They are grasping at straws." Nevertheless, James suggested documenting my mental clarity and decisional capacity, arranging for me to meet with a geriatric psychiatrist who could attest to my cognitive function if necessary. The evaluation was comprehensive and concluded with an unequivocal statement that I was fully capable of managing my financial affairs and making complex decisions. While the legal threats proved empty, the emotional attacks intensified. Stephanie began contacting extended family members and old friends, spreading a narrative that I had suffered some kind of mental break and was giving away family assets to spite her. Some relatives I had not heard from in years suddenly called to check on me, their concern barely masking their curiosity about the family drama. My cousin Elena, who had remained close to both Amanda and me after the divorce, called with genuine worry. "Ramiro, Stephanie is telling everyone you have become paranoid and delusional, claiming Amanda brainwashed her against you. She says you created false evidence and are trying to turn family against her mother. People are concerned." I explained the situation truthfully to Elena, including Maria's revelations and the documentation I had discovered. "I am not asking anyone to take sides," I told her. "I made this donation because it was the right thing to do, not to punish Stephanie. These children need the house more than she does, and her interest was purely financial." Elena was silent for a moment before responding. "I always wondered about some things Amanda would say about you that didn't match the man I knew. For what it is worth, I believe you, Ramiro." Elena's support meant more than she could know, a small validation in the midst of the storm. Not all reactions were supportive, however. Some family members sided firmly with Stephanie, viewing my actions as those of a bitter old man lashing out at his only child. Others simply withdrew, unwilling to become involved in what they saw as an ugly family dispute. Through it all, I found unexpected strength in my growing connection with the children at Oceanside. While lawyers exchanged letters and family members chose sides, I volunteered at the home 3 days a week, helping with homework, teaching basic carpentry skills to interested teenagers, and leading beach walks where we identified seashells and marine life. Anthony, the boy who had never seen the ocean up close, became a particular friend. His initial fear of the waves had transformed into a passionate interest in marine biology. I bought him field guides to ocean creatures and a quality pair of binoculars for bird watching along the shore. His growing confidence and trust were more valuable to me than any beachfront property. As the weeks passed, the legal threats from Stephanie and Jackson faded as they realized the donation could not be undone. Their attorney finally sent a formal letter acknowledging the legality of the trust, while expressing his client's deep disappointment in Mr. Alvarez's decision to disinherit his only child in favor of unrelated minors. The most difficult moment came when I received a large envelope from Stephanie containing every photo of us together she could find, torn into pieces, along with the few family heirlooms I had given her over the years. The message was clear. If I would not be her financial provider, I would not be in her life at all. Though I had anticipated this outcome, the finality of it still cut deeply. I gathered the torn photos, placing them in a box I kept in my closet, unable to discard even these damaged memories of happier times. Sarah noticed my subdued mood when I next visited Oceanside. After the children were occupied with an art project, she gently asked what was troubling me. "My daughter has made it clear she wants nothing more to do with me," I admitted. I knew this might happen, but actually experiencing it is harder than I expected. Sarah's response reflected her years of working with children who had experienced rejection and loss. When people show us they value what we can give them rather than who we are, it is a painful but necessary truth to recognize. You have not lost a loving relationship, Ramiro. You have simply stopped enabling a transactional one. Her wisdom helped me frame the situation differently. Perhaps what I was mourning was not the end of my relationship with Stephanie as it existed, but the final death of my hope for what that relationship might have become. In accepting this reality, painful as it was, I could begin to truly move forward. As autumn approached, transforming the Maine coastline into a canvas of red and gold, the legal battles definitively ended. Stephanie's lawyer informed her that pursuing further action would be costly and futile. The beach house now legally belonged to the Oceanside Children's Home, protected by a trust that ensured it would serve vulnerable children for generations to come. With this chapter closed legally, if not emotionally, I returned to California to help prepare the beach house for its new purpose. Working alongside volunteers and staff from Oceanside, I modified parts of the house to better serve the children's needs, creating a library corner with ocean views, converting one bedroom into an art studio, and building sturdy benches along the private beach path. Throughout these renovations, I found myself smiling more, laughing with the volunteers, and feeling a sense of purpose that had been absent during my years of trying to buy Stephanie's love. The house was transforming, and so was I. 6 months passed, bringing with them profound changes both to the beach house and to my life. What had once been my private sanctuary was now a vibrant haven for children who had previously known little stability or joy. The house echoed with laughter, occasional tears, and the constant energy of young lives finding healing through connection with the ocean and with caring adults. I had taken a small apartment nearby, allowing me to volunteer regularly while maintaining my own space. My days developed a new rhythm. Mornings spent walking the beach alone, contemplating the journey that had brought me here, afternoons working with the children, and evenings often shared with new friends among the staff and volunteer community. Sarah had implemented a remarkable program utilizing the house, bringing small groups of children for 3-day retreats focused on healing through ocean activities, art therapy, and simply experiencing the peaceful luxury of falling asleep to the sound of waves. For many of these children, it was their first experience of beauty and tranquility after lives marked by chaos and deprivation. Among all the children I came to know, 8-year-old Luis formed a special connection with me. Like me, he came from Mexican heritage, his parents having been deported while he remained in foster care. His situation echoed my own childhood insecurities, though my parents had been fortunate enough to obtain legal status eventually. Luis initially kept his distance, watching me suspiciously whenever I visited. Over weeks of patient interaction, mainly working together on rebuilding the property's weathered fence, he gradually began to ask questions about my life and share fragments of his own story. "Why did you give your house to kids you do not know?" he asked one afternoon as we sanded wooden planks for the fence. "Did not your family want it?" I considered how to answer truthfully while respecting his young age. "I learned something important, Luis. A home is not just walls and a roof, or even a beautiful view. A real home is where you are valued for who you are, not what you can provide." He nodded with the profound understanding that often comes from children who have experienced adult hardships. My foster parents before, they only wanted the money for taking care of kids. They did not want us. "Is that what you mean?" "Something like that," I acknowledged. "Sometimes people see others as a way to get something, not as people to love. When that happens, you have to be brave enough to create a new family with people who see your true value." His next question pierced straight to my heart. "Are we your new family now?" The simplicity of his question brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "I think perhaps we are learning to be a kind of family to each other," I replied honestly. The day Luis first ventured into the ocean waves, clutching my hand with fierce determination, I felt a joy that surpassed any I had known in years. His initial terror transformed into exhilarated delight as he learned to jump with the smaller waves and let the water swirl around his legs. "I am not afraid anymore," he shouted, his face glowing with achievement. Other children experienced similar transformations. 14-year-old Jasmine, who had barely spoken when I first met her, discovered a talent for photography, capturing stunning images of the coastline that now decorated the walls of the main living room. The twin brothers, Mason and Marcus, removed from an abusive home at age 5, gradually stopped flinching when adults moved too quickly near them, learning instead to race fearlessly into the ocean spray. As the children healed through their connection with the ocean and the stable environment the beach house provided, I found my own wounds beginning to close as well. The constant ache of Stephanie's rejection slowly transformed into a bittersweet acceptance. I stopped checking my phone constantly for messages that never came, and ceased rehearsing explanations and defenses in my mind for confrontations that would never occur. 7 months after the donation became final, an unexpected letter arrived from Stephanie. The sight of her handwriting on the envelope sent a jolt through me, momentarily reviving the hope that had never completely died. The letter inside was brief and coolly formal. "Dad, my attorney advises me that no further legal action regarding the beach house is viable. While I maintain that your actions were unfair and hurtful, I accept that the situation cannot be changed. I do not wish for further contact unless you reconsider your position regarding financial support for my future. Jackson and I are planning to start a family next year, and college funds for your grandchildren would be an appropriate way to make amends for your recent choices. Stephanie." The letter contained no acknowledgement of the pain she had caused, no recognition of the manipulation that had shaped our relationship, and certainly no apology. Even now, her only interest was in what financial benefit I might provide. The mention of future grandchildren as a leverage point was particularly painful, suggesting even her children would be presented as transactional opportunities rather than family connections. After careful consideration, I wrote a response that took me several drafts to complete. "Dear Stephanie, thank you for your letter. I understand that you are disappointed in my decision regarding the beach house. What you may not understand is why that decision was necessary for my own healing. For years, I have tried to show my love for you through financial support, believing that was the only connection you would accept. I now realize that approach helped neither of us grow into the people we could be. If someday you wish to have a relationship based on mutual respect and genuine care rather than financial expectations, I would welcome that opportunity. I would love to know you as the person you have become, separate from any financial considerations. As for your future children, I hope they grow up knowing they are valued for their unique selves, not for what they can provide to others. That is the greatest gift any parent can offer. With love, despite everything, Dad. I mailed the letter without expectation of response. Another step in my own healing, rather than an attempt to change Stephanie's perspective. Whether she ever recognized the damage done by years of manipulation was beyond my control. What remained within my power was how I chose to move forward from here. That choice became clearer with each passing day at Oceanside. The children who had experienced genuine abandonment and betrayal were, paradoxically, often more capable of authentic connection than my own daughter had been. They had no financial expectations, no inherited narrative of victimhood, only the honest need for stability, respect, and affection. One evening, as we gathered for a sunset bonfire on the beach, I watched Luis carefully constructing a sand fortress near the water's edge. He had spent hours on it, patiently rebuilding sections when waves occasionally reached his creation. As the tide began rising more insistently, threatening to erase his entire work, I expected frustration or tears. Instead, Luis stood calmly, observing as the ocean gradually reclaimed the sand. When the last tower disappeared beneath the foam, he turned to me with unexpected wisdom in his young eyes. "It is okay," he said, seeing my concerned expression. "The ocean always takes back the sand, but tomorrow we can build something new, maybe even better." His simple acceptance struck me as profound. Some losses are inevitable. Some relationships cannot be preserved no matter how desperately we try to hold on to them. The true test of resilience is not in preventing loss, but in how we choose to build anew afterward. In the children of Oceanside, I had found not replacements for the daughter I had lost, but entirely new connections that honored the man I was trying to become, not the financial provider I had been reduced to. These relationships, based on genuine presence rather than material provision, had a depth and authenticity I had longed for but never experienced with Stephanie. The beach house, once a symbol of my material success and retirement dreams, had transformed into something far more valuable, a place of healing and growth for children who truly appreciated its gifts. In giving it away, I had received something priceless in return, the opportunity to define family on new and healthier terms. As the bonfire flames cast golden light across the faces of children who had known profound loss, yet retained their capacity for joy, I finally understood the lesson life had been teaching me through years of painful experience. True family is not defined by blood or obligation, but by mutual respect, genuine care, and the willingness to see each other as complete human beings, rather than sources of benefit. The peace of this realization settled around me like a comfortable blanket as we watched the stars emerge above the darkening ocean. Whatever the future held, whether Stephanie ever chose a different path or remained distant, I had found a new way forward that honored both my past pain and future possibilities. What about you, watching this right now? Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between maintaining a toxic relationship or creating boundaries for your own well-being? Did you struggle with letting go of someone who only valued what you could provide rather than who you are? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share with others who might need to hear that sometimes the healthiest family is the one we choose rather than the one we were born into. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength in creating the authentic connections we all deserve.